Welcome back to the Dream Together podcast. My name is Clarence Hill Jr., and I'm so glad that you have joined us again. We're on a series where we brought in the concept of the church's impact on the city. We're covering 3 topics: family, leadership, and finances. And I hope you took the time or have had the opportunity to listen to the podcast on family. There are so many ideas for every person to think through because we all want to succeed, and we want to see you succeed as you want to see a difference and a change in your own communities, your own families, and in your own lives. I'm so excited to continue this conversation today. Scotia Moore, Lee Rowland, John Mark Hart, we're here together to talk today about leadership. I want to frame this conversation, team, so that we can really jump right into, like my parents would say, the meat and the potatoes. Do y'all know what I mean when I say the meat?
Sure.
We're not about to share a recipe. Okay, we're good. Okay, we want to jump right into it. And when I think about leadership, let's start on the highest levels. You know, 2024 is an election year. We have no idea how tumultuous it might be, but it definitely drives the concept of how easy it is to throw a dart at a leader or to complain about the character of leaders. But what I want to talk about is where we all live. Mm-hmm. When it comes to making a difference, leadership is not easy. But I want to invite us, whether you are a parent, whether you are an educator, or whether you do something to make a difference in the world and you're very intentional about that, I think we all play a part in raising leaders. Mm-hmm. And we want to raise leaders who are aware of the terrain, they know the challenges that we're facing right now, and they're highly intentional. Because I think it's an easy target to talk about the presidential candidates or the president of the United States. I think it's an easy target to talk about pastors, community leaders, or someone you're disgruntled with. But man, we so have a need for mentors and the 20-plussers, or maybe even the 16 and older, to pour into the next generation of children so that we can be intentional. There are communities today that are struggling because their leaders are worn out. So I want to start a conversation on leadership. What does it take to mold a leader? And what should we warn these Aristotles about who are going to try to raise up the next great Alexander the Great? No, I'm sorry. That maybe that's a little bit too far. How about Gandalf and Frodo?
There you go.
Is that better? What are we trying to bring out? And we are definitely struggling because, to me, a leader represents hope. Mm. A leader represents hope.
That's good.
And I would say that when you drive past a community and drugs are prevailing and poverty is prevailing, it's going to take some kind of a leader to step into that space and not lose hope and see a greater tomorrow past the pain that's right in front of them. I mean, especially if they live in spaces. If you live in a space like that, that is not an easy task. So let's get this conversation started. I believe America needs leaders, but we're not just talking about America today. We're talking just in principle and in concept. The world needs leaders. And when I send my children to school, I have 4 children. They are 20, 18, well, one's getting ready to turn 21. Shout out to Charity. 21, 18, 14, and 10. And Alicia, my wife and I, we are always telling them when you go into a school or when you go to the playground, lead. Lead, lead, lead. Use your influence. Because, see, there's some kid that might be getting bullied, and I need you to be the one that sees that kid needs a friend. Mm-hmm. And if you have influence on that playground, so every day we're telling them that someone needs to step up and drive negative conversations into a better direction. Every community, every family needs a dream. What's the first step to raising a leader? Scotia, you ready for this question?
I'll take a stab at it.
You have 10.
Yeah, I feel like our family really has, whether we want it or not, because I wouldn't say we always want it, and I wouldn't say each one wants it, but it's almost like whenever you get into a context, you end up being close to, or sometimes the pioneer leading something. And I think what it takes is service. Like, a lot of times people want to lead from a place of strength. Like, I'm good at this, I'm strong, I'm powerful. But to me, raising up a leader means you're raising someone willing to sacrifice, willing to suffer, and willing to serve. So that, to me, those are the qualifications of being the kind of leader that our communities need.
That's interesting. You caught me when you said...
I probably just threw the whole thing on its head. But I'm a leader. Like,
you said we're always wanting to lead from strength.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, but isn't that why we go to school, so we can sharpen our strength? But you just flipped it upside down. I want to double click on that, but
I mean, I just look at the example of Jesus as the first. I mean, like, he is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, but the example that he has called us into of what leadership looks like on the ground is washing feet. Which in that culture was the lowliest servant standing by the door to greet people, to prepare them to enter into the house. That's his example. And so if we aren't willing to lower ourselves, to be quiet, that verse comes to mind, make it your ambition, because we celebrate ambition in our culture, and leadership and ambition and drive, all those things are often interchangeable. But it says to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, to mind your own business, to work with your hands. And so that's just a different perspective of leadership, but that's probably where I enter into the conversation, because, having led things since I was a girl, leadership comes with a cost. There's a cost for leading, and that, and so if you're doing it well, it's going to require the willingness to endure some stuff that's not fun, and you might get celebrated, but it's not.
You reminded me of a story of my son, and so my son, he is 4 years older than my youngest daughter. Now, my youngest daughter, we call her an old soul. I just need to say again, do we need to define old soul? Yeah, I'm not talking about anything spooky. It's just that you talk to them, they're in a small body, and you feel like you're talking to an adult. She is an old soul. And so my son he's Jonathan. He is just cool with life. He's cool. He's locked in on an interest. Well, every now and then they would get into some tension, and her mind thinks super sharp and fast, and Jonathan's just chill. And boy, he'd come to my room just upset to tears, and she is just giving him the business. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, that girl is wearing this boy out. And so here's a leadership moment. Yeah. And so now it's whose turn is it in the kitchen? Whose turn is it to clean? And I said, son, number one, you're letting her see you sweat. You're giving her a false understanding of how to influence right now. She should not be able to drive your emotions that way. And I want to put this out here, that emotional intelligence is a big deal around leadership. Yeah. You will make a lot of bad decisions in life if you allow yourself to passionately move in directions. You almost never want to make a decision when, like, if you looked at still waters, if the waters are rippled, wait till you can have some settled waters in your heart. Okay, so I'm talking to my son, and I'm like, son, I'm going to show you how to do this, but it's not going to be the way you think. And he said, but it's not my turn, and she keeps doing this, and then she bothers me, and she won't listen to me when I'm telling her to do something. And now she went to bed before she was done with the kitchen, and it always falls on me. I said, let me show you how to do this one. I said, just trust me. Lick the whole kitchen and do it at the level. I said, Jonathan, you're our military guy in the family. You've always liked things clean. He used to get upset when kids would leave, and they'd leave before the parents made them pick up the toys. Listen to me, parents. If you go to somebody's house, send your child back upstairs or back to that back room and make sure they put their stuff up. All right, that's just a side note. That was free.
Free.
I said, but this is what I want you to do, Jonathan. Go back in that kitchen, kill it. Do it again the next night. If you say it to her once and she doesn't listen, just be gentle. By the third night, he got it. Before I even asked him the question, I usually ask him, how do you feel now that you set an example and you modeled what your expectation was? You didn't just start whining back and forth. How do you feel now that you modeled it? Now, the price of modeling the level his little sister should have been serving at was that he had to carry the whole load. But if you'd have saw his physical body posture when he came back in the room the next time, I said, you got it? I said, I got it. And when you just said, you flip it upside down, a lot of times people think it's our strength or it's our talent or something like that. No. Are you willing to pay the price? The streets, the community, your family, it could be in a hard place, but man, can you cross that bridge and model what needs to be modeled? Leadership, what do y'all say? Where do you start with leadership?
Well, I'd say a few things. I think one of them is starting by loving and valuing people enough to see their potential. Whether you're in a school or in a church or in a business, just looking around, everybody here has potential. And a lot of folks really have potential to lead. Sometimes leaders like to lead with a lot of workers helping them accomplish their mission. But if you do that, the movement, whatever we're trying to do, only grows by addition. But if we can do the less efficient thing to help these workers become leaders, now we can grow by multiplication.
That's great.
In terms of our impact. So starting with just seeing people, loving people, valuing people, seeing their potential to lead. Then I think in addition to the modeling you guys were just talking about, we need to show them what servant leadership looks like. Then we've got to be willing to create space for them to do things that they may not be all the way ready to do yet, and then to encourage them along the way. And the thing is that often to delegate leadership, to put somebody else in charge of something, will require much more time and effort from me as leader than just to do it myself. But if I can create space for somebody else to do it, that may take a lot of investment, but then a few years down the road, they're able to do it better than I could without any supervision from me. So now we've had multiplication of impact. And as a matter of fact, I was gently encouraged, admonished, whatever the word is, by Jared Stevenson, one of my co-pastors, just recently, because I was wearing myself out trying to take care of a few people in our church that had a lot of high need, who I love. And when the question is coming up, what is stopping us from getting a team together to work on this, is because I don't have enough bandwidth in my life to do all the work to get that team together. And he was basically saying, well, we got to find that bandwidth, because if not, you're going to kill yourself trying to do this forever. You've got to, it's either find the bandwidth to develop leaders now, or this thing never goes farther than what you can personally do. And then I think after we create that space, then we just got to be there to mentor, which means both encouragement and redirection. I'll share a little story I was just thinking about. When starting the church and then the clinic and school and various things that we've started in South Oklahoma City, looking back, I would say that me now would think that me then was not old enough or experienced enough or ready for any of those leadership responsibilities. Yeah. But I had some people that were older than me now and more experienced than me now who believed in me, who were willing to take a chance. And when I faced a lot of criticism and faced discouragement, they stuck up for me in public and in private. times that I would have probably given up. And then, though, they helped me recalibrate. I was thinking about this in relation to our conversation about family last time. There was a point, let's see, this probably would have been a decade ago. So we were about 7 years into, I've been married to my wife for 17 years now, so it would have been about 7 years at this point. And I was working hard in a lot of ways, serving in the community. We were doing after-school programs. We were mentoring people, trying to get a medical clinic off the ground to serve the community. I was finishing up some grad school, teaching at the university, just doing a lot. And I was running kind of ragged, and my wife was holding down a lot of things in our family without me being present enough. And I had some mentors that encouraged me and admonished me and did various things to help me recalibrate. And, there's a lot of family rhythms that have been reset about how we think about date night and how we guard a day of rest every week, and how I say no to really great opportunities in order to make sure I'm at home for dinner and tuck in a certain number of times every week, and, all those kinds of things. But those specific changes, part of what happened is, as we were getting exhausted, just some mentors that said, John Mark, you think, first of all, God just wants you to love your family. That's more important to him than all the impact you're having in the community.
Right.
But second of all, you think that the deepest impact is this next leader in the community you're mentoring, or the next organization you're starting. But in reality, there's only a few potential leaders who are going to spend 18 to 20 years growing up, spending all day, every day under your mentorship. And one of them, Dave Edwards, he was probably in his 60s at the time. He said, when I was your age doing ministry, I always thought the thing I was doing on the campus or the thing I was doing here or there was the most important. And now I can see very clearly that the little people growing up in my house that have spread out all over the world,
that's powerful.
They were the main impact of my life and of my ministry,
That's powerful.
And so that it just was, they were just encouraging me, but then being that reset, that redirect for me to address some priorities so that I could keep going over the long haul.
So you said he contrasted for you that no matter how many young people you raise up in the community, that'll be like, what, a 1 to 3 year term, maybe 5 to 7 years in some cases, but nothing compared to your children. I think that is just powerful. And I do want to kind of link this to the last podcast around family. We are at a point, I would say, that we've got to continue to push in this area because society has so let go of family. And even, I know what we're saying. I'm asking you to do something that's painful. Mm-hmm. I'm asking you to look in a direction that you would probably not want to look into. My wife was begging me to, please, Clarence, watch Kirk Franklin's story on fatherhood.
Oh, it's so
called
good.
Father's Day.
Oh, I was totally messed up. I was like weeping after I watched it. I know this isn't necessarily a commercial for that, but you're talking about a catalyst to healing generationally. Mm-hmm. This man's already a world-known leader. Yeah. He's successful, but 2023 was like such a catalytic year for him because of the healing that is happening in his relationship with his father and also with his son. And we're aware of some of those things because there were public stories. Yes. Some of the brokenness was public. And I'm so glad that he took the time to talk about the process of restoration publicly also, because a lot of leaders don't want to do that. We want the family stuff. It's like, let's keep that back here and deal with that here. But a few of us have to step out publicly and give an example of restoration. I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, what we want to keep this in front of us on this podcast, that we're all about change. We're all about dreaming, but I don't want people to be ignorant as though we're just scooting along. I see some friends, and it seems like it comes in waves, where they're getting these big public awards, and you can see them on Facebook dressed all nice and well-deserved awards. But what I don't want people to miss is that social media, we're not posting the moment where the makeup is running and you haven't shaved and you are feeling hopeless, that doesn't go on social media.
Yeah, yeah.
So in our community, we walk together closely to care for one another. And I always want to keep that in front of everybody. Don't give up on family. I would say this absolutely is outlawed to give up on family. Even if someone has like divorced or something like that, God at least wants you not to have a bitterness hole. He at least wants the bitterness cleaned out. I'm not here to say whose fault was it or anything like that, but clean the bitterness out because, you know, that scripture that says, you know, a root of bitterness will spring up and defile many. It will affect you. It will affect your future. And I really want to say, draw that line, even if the best you can do relationally is pray for the other person. You know, when I watched it last night, and it's called Father's Day by Kirk Franklin. And we're not here. I know I can hear people saying, Kirk Franklin, and some people like him and some people don't. I just want you to hear a human story. Yeah. Just hear a human story. And as someone who's out in a public space, a lot of us, we get to hide our brokenness. And some people that are famous, their brokenness is in front of the world. He's in tears. And I did not know that it was going to lead into first. Should I spoil it?
Don't spoil it. I haven't watched it yet.
Okay.
Don't spoil it.
All right. That was intergenerational restoration. And like you said, here's a man who has this great platform, but none of it could erase the pain of family relationships. You say, well, what does that have to do with leadership? Being a great leader will never avoid family. It will always be there. And I think it's healthy for us to invite people in and say, you can be broken and be a blessing. If anything, it keeps us qualified for the grace of God. And I would almost dare say that it probably has done all of us well to always have some area of brokenness because of our proclivity to lean towards ourselves or, you know, receive the award. And we're like, yeah, you know, it was God, but, you know, it's actually me, but it was God. But then when you have that pain point and you know the only thing that got you up on that stage was the Lord, then it's pure. Let's keep talking about leadership. This is an invitation just to catch a glimpse. What are you all going to say to someone who is either leading right now, they're thinking about quitting, or they have quit? What's some of the real stories that you feel like they need to be out there? What should they be warned of? What should they know about the real price of being a change agent that says, I refuse to turn my face from human suffering. I will make a difference. I think because the equation in me that I still battle to this day, there's a calculation that says, if I want to do good for others, then that makes everything in the rest of my life should work out perfectly because I'm doing the right things. Right. That equation.
It's leading from strength. It's like people like I have it together and therefore I can make a difference. But it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it doesn't mean the pain's going away or everything that you dreamed of is going to happen for you. But is that going to change my commitment to love others? Jump in there, Lee, John Mark. How prepare the leaders of today, prepare the leaders of tomorrow with the real story?
Real briefly, I would like to say that in talking to leaders, I've said it in my book, said publicly, it is lonely at the top. And so be prepared to be lonely at the top when you're trying to do the right thing. And there's not going to be a lot of people behind you when you stand up for what is right. But I don't know, germane to that, I would also say that a leader needs to be willing to lose. And that's not just all lead. I've heard a well-respected leader basically say as much with regards to some of this social agreement and things like that. Just be willing to lose. A leader that I led with, we were approached by a would-be person that was running for political office here in Oklahoma City, and this person was asking for our advice, and the person, the other leader with me said, you need to be willing to lose. And as you submit ideas, it's going to be unpopular with people in your party. Are you willing to lose? Are you willing to lose the election as you stand up for this or that? Are you willing to lose? You're still a leader. You didn't get that office, but people still looked at you and saw what you did. We had 2 people vying for governor, or I think in Utah a couple years ago, and both of those guys, it's the first time I've ever seen it, probably you as well. They both stood together and said, this person right here is not a bad person. You got to go find it. He said, this is not a bad person. I think I'm the better. I'd like your vote. When do we see people willing to lose? As a father, I just love looking at y'all because y'all so much younger. Y'all haven't even gotten there yet. You haven't even gotten there yet.
Lee is 103, by the way.
And I'm still cool. Good. And I'm still cool. Hate the player, not the the game, not the player. And so, but as a young father, I used to always win. I used to always win. I was the father. I was the husband. I used to always win. Y'all don't hear me. I almost never win anymore. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it because I want them to remember how I reacted when I lost.
Lee, come on in the room.
I used to win. I'd say, go clean your room up. This is the best team, this, whatever. And my word was the final word. Now, I almost never win. And I'm okay with it because I want them to remember, hey, listen here. Here's still a way that he conducted himself, even when he might have got quiet, and they might, but I didn't say it's my way or the highway. Everybody in the house has to believe this, do that. I think a leader, and I'm not trying to illuminate myself. I'm trying to use myself as an example. We can't always win in a leadership role, and people look at us and our influence. You can't make anybody do anything, but you can influence people. And sometimes, I think one of you said it, sometimes people won't see it for years. They won't see it for years, but it'll just make that imprint.
Lee, that word is just gold. I hope we take that segment and get it out there. You need to put that in some kind of a book form or something. Because I remember going to a big international health conference, and it was in the early days when we were starting Stronger Together, and we were always the broke ones at the conference. You know? And I never forget talking to a friend. I think she was from Boston or Philadelphia, somewhere up there, and their team was funded. You know, they were very well funded. So she was walking me through, you know, I'm asking these questions about, okay, am I doing everything right? And she just stopped a moment, and she's like, wait a minute. She's like, you don't understand. We envy you guys because you guys have passion. And that opened me to realize that sometimes you think God has you on second best. And actually what you're doing is modeling the greater thing. So when I even think about where family is, if we put out here that, you have failed in life if you're not passing away with a spouse of 50 to 60 plus years and 4 generations of families without any scars on them, then you have failed. What we're saying, what I'm seeing, grabbing what you just said, Lee, I'm like, well, that makes so much sense now. If all we ever did was succeeded in front of a bunch of young people and families who are coming out of just horrifying brokenness, no context for a dad in the home, no context for what it means to be quiet, no context for long-term relationships if you were raised in foster care, bouncing from home to home, just no context for what wholeness looks like, then they need to see our scars. Yeah. And if we're all smooth-skinned, you know, and if we have never faced loss or people walking away from our churches or an absolute betrayal or an absolute misunderstanding, they need notes for that because they were raised in those spaces. Lee, that was just, that was gold. That was gold. Leaders who lose, but watch how I do it. Lee, I think that makes you 127 now. but seriously, I don't want to be too light and draw away from the riches of what you just said. Because when that friend told me that, you know, you all have passion, I've guarded it ever since.
That's awesome.
I said, I don't care how much money or wealth we ever get. If I ever catch us losing our willingness to sacrifice, I know that something's not right in our operation system.
There you go.
And what you just did was I think if anyone else is listening, like I'm listening, you just invited every leader to model losing times really, really well. Because I can't tell you what it's like to lose a marriage because, you know, we're 25 years. It will be, you know, you're going to have a hard time trying to get me to turn my eyes away from my wife, just if you were thinking about trying it. But somebody out there needs to hear that they're sitting there in an empty apartment. So I can't hang out with Lee and John Mark and Scotia because they all got their marriages intact. People need to know how if now the resume doesn't look perfect, what do I do with my life now? Beautiful, Lee. Beautiful. John Mark.
Yes, sir.
You gave yourself to work in a space, and I just want to set the backdrop just a little bit. You could have went anywhere in the world with help us land this plane. You could have went anywhere in the world with your education. You could be teaching at top universities. We all know it. You don't say it, but we all know it. But yet you move your family into actually the most impoverished area in Oklahoma City. It used to be the Black community, but we did a study about the 18-year gap of life expectancy, and it wasn't in the Black community anymore. It was actually on the South Side, and you moved there. So you know a little bit about leadership and pain. So what can you pass on to us? What's coming up in your mind around leadership?
Well, thanks for those words, Clarence. And I was just thinking, you know, if we ask the question, what is a leader? And then ask the other question, what is a redemptive leader? Maybe that's a good way to end today.
Good.
You know, there's different ways of defining leadership. If you go read the leadership books, leadership gurus, but it's basically about influence, right? A leader is somebody who influences people towards a common goal. But that is true of a gang leader. That's true of a warlord. There's all kinds of leaders out there. And you can be in a position of power, and you have power, but you're not really a leader. Because you got into a position of power for the sake of power, and you put your finger in the wind to see which way the wind was blowing and said the right things to get your power, you know. But Dr. King said leaders don't find consensus, they build consensus. In other words, there's a truth they're going after for the benefit of others that they're willing to sacrifice for. And so a leader is somebody who influences people towards a common goal. A redemptive leader, I would say, is someone who influences people towards a common goal of good, that's bigger than themselves, that's bringing healing and hope to the world, especially to dark places and hard places. And if we think about the leaders we most admire from history, they were always criticized during their generation. They always suffered. They always paid a high price. But what they had in common was they saw, here's a place of pain in the world, and I want to move into that place of pain to give my life for something bigger than myself. And I think that's who I want to be like when I grow up. That's who Jesus is, and that's who all my heroes in the history of the world are. And I think the church has unique, to tie it back to our kind of theme for this series about the church has a unique opportunity to be, I almost said a leadership factory, but I don't like, how about we can be a leadership garden or something like that? It's a better metaphor. But a place where we're saying to everybody, look, there's a lot of pain around us. Let's run in that together. God made you to be an instrument of healing in this community. And then we're encouraging and affirming each other along the way, giving each other the opportunity to fail and not be canceled, to make mistakes. Hopefully, pastors and leaders are able to talk about their own struggles and their own family and their own need for forgiveness in a way that lets other people know that's okay, so that next generation coming up can think, this is normal, this is normal, this is how we live as human beings, to know I've got a purpose from God to look for the places of pain in the world and run in to see if I can bring healing. And if we do church that way, then leaders are going to grow.
That's beautiful.
Yes, it is.
One of my favorite moments as a pastor, I remember right down this hall here, one of the ladies who had just turned her life around, she comes in and she had been missing for a couple Sundays. And she came in and she was just, eyes were bloodshot red, and she's crying. And she runs straight to me and she said, I'm so sorry. I started drinking again. I said, yeah, but you're here. And it was just to have that moment where perhaps the voices in her head were telling her how bad she was and how worthless she was, and how maybe there were echoes in her mind that said, see, you've screwed up most of your life, and then you stand up and you get baptized, you give your life to Jesus yet. And just to say 3 words, but you're here.
That was leadership, brother.
Yeah.
That's leadership.
And I love the house, but I've always been drawn to the broken.
One of the thoughts I've had many times, Clarence, am I the kind of father, am I the kind of pastor, the kind of leader that when people fail, they run away from me, or that when they fail, they run towards me?
Oh, golly.
And I want to be the latter. That's what you just described. That's who God is. Yeah. So much of the prophets of Israel are saying is, you've failed, but don't run away from God, run back to him, and he'll receive you. And when you lead like that, now you've created an environment where people aren't living in fear and shame. Who they're made to be can blossom. They can become leaders.
That's a great place to land this plane. As my child said, Dad, you say that at the end of every one of your messages, that you can land the plane. Yeah, sometimes we have to circle the airport a few times just to make sure you got my last point well.
Sure.
I will share the exposing secret. You really don't get trained to give hope in that way. The truth is you actually needed it yourself, so it's easy to spot somebody else who needs it. All right, don't be afraid to step out and go after pain and human suffering. I actually don't know if there is a context outside of some form of pain or suffering, whether someone else's life or our own. But I would say the scariest place for you to live or to plant your own family is in a safe, comfortable palace where you could get a false understanding and come up with the wrong Jesus. Because the heart that's prepared by him produces the church and the people that will change a city. Y'all, thanks for jumping in one more time on the Dream Together podcast. We are going to cover finances the next time. We're going to get very practical. We're going to talk philosophically about some things. But money is a factor in the world that we live in. We look forward to seeing you then.